Overnight, Iran's retaliation, missiles raining down on Tel Aviv, killing at least 3 and injuring dozens more, according to Israeli police.
150 ballistic missiles, 100 kamikaze drones, all launched within just 2 hours. Iran's attack on Israel was not a random act of retaliation. It was a coordinated, large-scale operation targeting critical infrastructure across the country. This assault pierced Israel's highly regarded missile defenses, exposing vulnerabilities that few anticipated. Fires burned in major cities, and the psychological impact was immediate. Military analysts argue that this strike marks a turning point in the region's military balance. Iran's actions signal more than anger. They reveal a calculated effort to demonstrate new long-range capabilities and challenge Israel's strategic advantage. But what made this attack so different from anything we've seen before? Iran's missile strike on Israel represented a methodical demonstration of its evolving military strategy, built on precise coordination and overwhelming force. In this operation, Iran combined over 150 ballistic missiles, including Shahab-3, Sejil, Zulfiqar, and Desful variants, with approximately 100 kamikaze drones, all launched in tightly synchronized waves. The intent was clear: saturate Israel's air defense network, exploit potential vulnerabilities, and deliver a direct challenge to the country's reputation for technological superiority in missile interception. The attack unfolded in carefully planned stages. Kamikaze drones led the initial assault, targeting radar installations and air defense batteries. Their role was to disrupt detection and interception capabilities, diminishing the effectiveness of Israel's early warning systems. By neutralizing or distracting key air defense components, these drones paved the way for the main barrage of ballistic missiles. This deliberate sequencing created a window of vulnerability, allowing subsequent projectiles to evade interception and reach high-value targets. Iran's choice of missiles reflected a deep understanding of Israel's defensive architecture. The Shahab-3 and Sejil missiles offered medium to long-range strike capability, with the Sejil's solid fuel propulsion reducing launch preparation time and detection. The Zulfiqar and Desful missiles, featuring terminal phase maneuverability and high accuracy, posed an additional challenge by altering their trajectories as they approached targets, complicating interception by Israel's multi-layered systems. These technical characteristics demonstrated Iran's intent to stress every layer of Israel's defenses, from Iron Dome to David's sling and arrow interceptors. Strategic targeting was another hallmark of this operation. Iranian forces focused not only on urban centers, but also on critical infrastructure, aiming to disrupt Israel's military logistics and civilian life. In Haifa, a missile strike ignited a fire at an oil refinery, producing visible damage and threatening energy supplies. At the Ramat David Air Base, explosions caused structural damage to hangars and logistics lines, temporarily degrading operational readiness. In Tel Aviv, the impact reached residential neighborhoods, with missiles penetrating urban defenses and causing significant property damage. The deliberate selection of these targets indicated a broader strategy to undermine Israel's sense of security and operational capability. The coordinated use of drones and missiles created a saturation effect, overwhelming Israel's air defense network. This tactic forced interceptors to prioritize threats, inevitably allowing some projectiles to slip through. The Iron Dome and David's sling systems, while effective against isolated attacks, struggled to manage the sheer volume and complexity of simultaneous missile and drone incursions. The operation exposed the limitations of even the most advanced multi-tiered defense systems when confronted with a concentrated, multifaceted assault. The aftermath underscored the effectiveness of Iran's tactical blueprint. Fires in Haifa's industrial zone, damaged runways at air bases, and civilian casualties in Tel Aviv all pointed to the real-world consequences of a well-executed saturation strike. The psychological impact was equally significant. Images of burning infrastructure and civilians seeking shelter disrupted the perception of Israeli invulnerability and raised questions about the resilience of its defenses under sustained pressure. Iran's approach in this attack was not merely retaliatory. It represented a calculated effort to showcase advancements in missile and drone technology, signaling a shift in the regional balance of power. The integration of maneuverable, high-speed missiles with precision-guided drones illustrated a new level of sophistication. These capabilities, once thought beyond Iran's reach, now present a credible threat not only to Israel, but potentially to other regional adversaries. This operation also set a precedent for future conflicts. By demonstrating the ability to coordinate large-scale, complex attacks that penetrate advanced defense systems, Iran has altered the calculus for both Israel and its allies. The prospect that similar tactics could be employed by Iran's regional proxies further complicates the security landscape. Military analysts now recognize that the era of asymmetric warfare, where saturation strikes and drone swarms can challenge even the most robust defenses, has fully arrived. The events of this attack forced Israel to confront the reality that its air defense network, long considered nearly impenetrable, is susceptible to carefully orchestrated, high-volume assaults. The implications extend beyond immediate physical damage, prompting urgent reassessment of defensive strategies and international cooperation. As the dust settles, the focus shifts to the resilience of Israel's defense systems and the broader questions now facing its military and political leadership. Israel's multi-layered air defense network, long considered a model of technological innovation, faced its most severe trial during the Iranian missile and drone assault. The Iron Dome, designed to intercept short-range rockets, worked alongside David's sling and arrow systems, which target medium and long-range threats respectively. In theory, this overlapping shield was intended to neutralize a spectrum of airborne dangers. In practice, the sheer volume and coordination of Iran's attack exposed weaknesses that had previously been theoretical. The Iranian operation overwhelmed Israel's defenses with precision and timing. Hundreds of ballistic missiles and kamikaze drones converged on Israeli airspace in a matter of hours. Israel's defense systems, engineered to handle a limited number of simultaneous threats, were forced to make critical decisions about which projectiles to intercept. As a result, operators prioritized incoming missiles that posed the greatest risk to population centers and key infrastructure. This triage approach, while necessary, left gaps. Several projectiles slipped through, striking targets that range from residential neighborhoods in Tel Aviv to vital energy and military assets in Haifa. Kamikaze drones played a disruptive role. Unlike conventional missiles, these drones targeted Israel's radar installations and interceptor launch sites. By disabling or distracting detection equipment, the drones created temporary blind spots in the air defense network. In some instances, Iron Dome batteries could not respond effectively, allowing subsequent missile waves to penetrate Israeli airspace. Defense officials later acknowledged that the attack's complexity, combining drones and missiles in coordinated waves, presented a challenge unlike any previously faced. The consequences were immediate and visible. In Tel Aviv, missiles struck apartment buildings and ignited fires, overwhelming emergency services. The outskirts of the city saw a direct hit on a military warehouse, resulting in secondary explosions as stored ammunition detonated. Haifa's port, critical to Israel's economy, suffered a missile strike on a fuel storage tank, leading to a fire that disrupted shipping operations and threatened nearby infrastructure. The Gilal industrial area, home to sensitive intelligence facilities, also sustained damage. Satellite images confirmed the destruction of hangars and communications antennas, underscoring the vulnerability of even high-security sites. These events highlighted operational limitations in Israel's defense systems. The Iron Dome, while highly effective against isolated rocket barrages, struggled to keep pace with the volume and variety of threats. David's sling and arrow interceptors, optimized for specific types of missiles, were similarly taxed by the need to respond to simultaneous attacks from multiple vectors. The coordinated use of drones to degrade radar coverage further complicated response efforts, forcing operators to adapt in real time with incomplete information. Military analysts and defense officials have pointed to the psychological impact of the attack as significant as the physical damage. For years, Israeli civilians relied on the assurance that advanced technology would protect them from large-scale missile strikes. The reality of rockets detonating in urban centers and the sight of smoke rising from key infrastructure have undermined that sense of security. Bomb shelters, once a symbol of preparedness, became a necessity as sirens echoed through the night and families sought refuge underground. Internationally, the attack prompted immediate discussions about Israel's future defense posture. Calls for increased radar redundancy, improved detection algorithms, and greater integration with allied defense assets have become urgent. The United States expressed strong support, signaling willingness to deploy additional missile batteries and advanced detection technologies to the region. Israeli officials are now reassessing their approach, exploring ways to counter large-scale, coordinated assaults that combine traditional missiles with evolving drone tactics. This attack has made it clear that even the most sophisticated air defense systems can be overwhelmed by a determined adversary employing saturation tactics. The vulnerabilities exposed are not isolated to one event, but reflect broader challenges facing advanced militaries in an era of rapidly evolving threats. As Israel moves to adapt its strategies and shore up its defenses, the psychological and strategic aftershocks of this attack continue to reverberate, raising new questions about the future of deterrence and the stability of the region. The Iranian missile and drone strike marked a pivotal moment in the region, sending strategic shockwaves through both Israeli society and the wider Middle East. The attack's scale and precision delivered a calculated blow not only to Israel's military infrastructure, but also to its psychological defenses. For years, Israel's reputation as a regional superpower rested on its ability to deter and repel threats with advanced technology and swift military responses. Yet, as sirens wailed across Tel Aviv and Haifa late into the night, the reality of vulnerability became unmistakable. The simultaneous barrage of over 100 ballistic missiles and dozens of kamikaze drones overwhelmed Israel's layered defenses, allowing a handful of projectiles to reach densely populated urban centers and critical infrastructure. The resulting fires, power outages, and structural damage, particularly in civilian areas, served as a stark reminder that even the most sophisticated defense networks can be breached under sustained assault. The psychological impact on the Israeli public was immediate and profound. Residents who had long placed their trust in systems like Iron Dome found themselves grappling with the limits of that protection. In Tel Aviv, missiles struck residential neighborhoods, collapsing sections of buildings and igniting fires that burned through the early morning. Haifa's port area suffered a direct hit to a fuel storage tank, causing an explosion that disrupted both economic activity and daily life. Widespread power outages and transportation shutdowns further unsettled civilians, amplifying a sense of uncertainty and fear. The attack forced many Israelis to confront the possibility that future barrages could inflict even greater harm, eroding the confidence that has underpinned daily routines and public morale for years. This erosion of confidence quickly translated into political pressure. Opposition factions seized on the government's perceived shortcomings, criticizing both its handling of the immediate crisis and the broader strategy that may have contributed to the escalation. Debates intensified over the wisdom of recent Israeli operations targeting Iranian assets, with critics arguing that such actions risk provoking larger-scale retaliation. The government's struggle to reassure the public and demonstrate control over the situation exposed divisions within Israel's political landscape. These internal tensions complicate decision-making at a critical juncture, as leaders weigh the risks of further military action against the need to restore a sense of security. The regional implications of the attack were equally significant. Iran's message extended well beyond Israel's borders, signaling to allies and adversaries alike that it possesses both the intent and capacity to escalate regional conflict. In response to the strike, Hezbollah in Lebanon raised its alert status, readying its forces for potential engagement if hostilities intensify. Pro-Iranian militias in Syria and Iraq consolidated their positions, preparing to act should Iran call for the opening of additional fronts. This coordinated posture among Iran's proxy forces underscores a long-standing strategy. Leverage allied groups to apply pressure on Israel from multiple directions, forcing it to divide resources and attention. The potential for a multi-front conflict now looms larger, as regional actors assess both the risks and opportunities presented by the new security environment. Beyond the military and political realms, the attack's effects rippled through neighboring states. Countries like Jordan and Saudi Arabia monitored developments closely, aware that instability could spill across borders or draw them into the conflict. The demonstration of Iran's ability to coordinate large-scale, multi-vector attacks with missiles and drones has forced a reassessment of regional defense postures. For states already wary of Tehran's ambitions, the events in Israel serve as a warning of the broader challenges posed by evolving missile and drone technologies, as well as the risk of proxy-driven escalation. Within Israel's defense establishment, the scale and complexity of the Iranian operation prompted a thorough re-examination of existing strategies. Analysts noted Iran's deliberate use of ballistic missiles such as the Dezful and Shahab-3 to test the limits of Israel's interceptors, while precision drones targeted detection systems to degrade response capabilities. The attack's sequencing and saturation tactics revealed gaps that had previously existed only in theoretical scenarios. This forced adaptation under fire has highlighted the need for improved early warning systems, greater redundancy in air defense networks, and closer coordination with international partners. As the region absorbs the implications of this assault, the sense of uncertainty extends beyond military calculations. Civilians, policymakers, and military leaders alike are now engaged in a broader debate about deterrence, escalation, and the future of regional stability. The events have redefined the boundaries of what is possible in modern conflict, demonstrating that even well-prepared states can be caught off guard by determined adversaries willing to employ new tactics on a large scale. Attention now turns to how the international community will respond to this new reality, with concerns mounting over the potential for further escalation and the emergence of a broader multi-front conflict. Global diplomacy now faces a critical juncture as the world's major powers weigh their next moves in response to the unprecedented missile and drone assault. The United Nations Security Council has called an emergency session, a clear signal that the crisis has become a matter of urgent international concern. The United States, Israel's closest ally, has reiterated its support for Israel's right to self-defense, but has also cautioned against any retaliatory action that might ignite a broader regional conflict. This message underscores the complexity of Washington's position. It must reassure Israel of unwavering support while preventing a chain reaction that could draw in multiple nations and escalate into a wider war. Behind the scenes, the US president has convened emergency meetings with intelligence and military advisors, evaluating both the immediate security needs of Israel and the risks of further entanglement. The US has moved to bolster Israeli defenses, considering the deployment of additional missile batteries to the eastern Mediterranean. Yet American officials remain acutely aware that any direct military engagement with Iran could trigger unpredictable consequences, including the risk that Iranian proxies across the region would open new fronts. The administration's approach reflects a determination to contain the conflict while maintaining credible deterrence. Other global actors have responded with calls for restraint and de-escalation. Russia and China have emphasized the need for an immediate halt to hostilities, each motivated by strategic interests. Moscow seeks to avoid distraction from its operations elsewhere, while Beijing is concerned about the stability of global energy supplies, an issue of direct relevance to its economic security. Both powers have refrained from taking sides, instead advocating for diplomatic solutions and warning against the dangers of escalation. In the Gulf, anxiety is mounting over the possibility that the conflict could disrupt regional energy flows and destabilize fragile economies. Qatar and the United Arab Emirates have issued statements expressing concern, aware that any expansion of hostilities could threaten their own security and economic interests. Saudi Arabia has attempted to position itself as a mediator, urging both sides to avoid further escalation. However, the kingdom's ability to influence events is limited by its complex relationships with both Israel and Iran. Turkey has also offered to mediate, but its leverage is constrained by long-standing rivalries and shifting alliances. The risk of a wider war is heightened by the actions and posture of Iran's regional allies. Hezbollah has raised its alert level, signaling readiness to intervene if the conflict expands. Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria have also indicated that they are prepared to act if called upon by Tehran. The potential for these groups to open new fronts against Israel or to target US assets in the region complicates the calculations of all involved parties. Any miscalculation or provocation could rapidly transform a contained crisis into a multi-front regional conflict. Economic factors further complicate the situation. Iran has threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz if the United States intervenes directly. This narrow waterway is a choke point for a significant portion of the world's oil supply. Any disruption would have immediate consequences for global energy prices and could trigger a broader economic shock, particularly in oil-dependent economies. The presence of US and NATO naval forces in the region increases the risk of accidental or intentional clashes, raising the spectre of direct confrontation between global powers. Meanwhile, humanitarian organizations warn that the human cost of escalation could be severe. Preparations are underway for a potential refugee crisis, as civilians in northern Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank brace for possible displacement. Infrastructure damage and the threat of sustained violence could overwhelm local and international aid efforts, leaving vulnerable populations at risk. Diplomatic channels remain active, but the path forward is uncertain. The willingness of regional powers to mediate is constrained by deep-seated rivalries and competing interests. The international community faces a test of its capacity to prevent further escalation and to manage the dangerous dynamics unleashed by the latest exchange of fire. As leaders deliberate their next steps, the region stands on the threshold of significant change. The decisions made in the coming days will determine whether the crisis can be contained or whether it will reshape the strategic landscape of the Middle East. Against this backdrop, the conclusion is clear. Iran's assault has redefined the region's military landscape. The unprecedented combination of ballistic missiles and drones exposed critical gaps in Israel's air defense, challenging assumptions about technological superiority and deterrence. Tehran's willingness to orchestrate such a complex, high-volume strike signals a new phase in regional power dynamics. Military analysts emphasize that this event is not a one-off escalation, but a deliberate message. Iran has demonstrated both capability and intent to confront Israel directly, raising the stakes for future conflict. The strategic balance in the Middle East now demands urgent reassessment from all actors involved.